how many contract developers we might have at any time. And honestly, I don't have a perfect number, but it's certainly over 3,000 and probably under 5. So 10 consultants to, let's say, 4,000 developers. I don't know if that's a happy ratio, but that's where we are. And of course, we would always like to get more investments in security, but I think that's about where we seem to be leveling off at. We were building the program, adding consultants for the first 4 years, and I think we're going to probably stick at 10 for a while unless we find that there are problems, incidents, that sort of thing. Other questions? Yes, question?
Yeah, the new employees join the company or external contractors, do you have a crash program or something?
Yes, so the question is for new employees to the company, they are required to take a developing secure systems course. Contractors are held accountable if, let's say, for example, they're offsite, we would hold the external consulting company responsible via legal contract that their developers knew secure development practices. And we would, if they're on site, we'd certainly make our training available to them. I think one area where we could improve is probably on metrics around education. We know that they're doing compliance checks, but we ourselves are not responsible for the compliance portion. That's another group. What we've decided to do for the current time is to show completion statistics to each VP within information technology, within product group and services, so that they understand how educated their developers are. And we try to explain the business value of training them at the beginning so that they don't make the mistakes as they're working on their projects. Other questions? Yes?
Since you mentioned metrics, how do you track the success of the program besides the number of projects you get involved in?
Yeah. So around metrics, how do we track the success of the program besides just sheer project engagement? And I think one of the most helpful metrics we get out of our source code analyzer is the number of hot or critical issues that we prevented from going into production. That's really compelling to our executive leadership. They like hearing that, and in the first 2.5, 3 years, the number was around 40,000 hot issues that we prevented from getting into production. Because, yeah, question?
Yeah, so let's say your tool shows that you prevented 20,000 vulnerabilities for going into production.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it problematic that you have these 20,000 vulnerabilities in the first place?
Excellent question. So if the tool has showed up 20,000 vulnerabilities, isn't it a problem that those developers didn't already know how to prevent that? Is that kind of the question? Yeah. It is a problem. And we haven't reached the level of sophistication with every development team around the country, around the company, as we would like to have. So I think now we're at the point in the maturity of our program where we need to put more emphasis on the very point that you raised, which is if we're training correctly, they're taking the training and passing, why are they not coding correctly? It's also true, though, that we're telling them to scan their code throughout the development lifecycle, not just at the end. So if they scan early and they have a few hundred issues, they scan later and they have 0 issues, that's really a success story too. It's not the best. You would prefer that they had 0 at the very beginning. But we think the source code analyzer tool is actually an educational tool in itself because it comes with great documentation about how to fix the problems. So that's another component of our training program, kind of by accident. Yeah, question? We use Fortify, and we recently switched from Fortify Manager to Fortify 360. We're really happy with the tool. There were a couple of things that we were looking for in a tool. It had to be able to handle Java, had to be able to handle .NET, and it had to have enterprise reporting so that development teams could upload their scans. We could see the audit trail of when they uploaded and provide that as evidence for our compliance efforts. Yeah, question?
Matrix is something which is very interesting. Would you be willing to share the matrix that you use?
So the question is about metrics. Would we be willing to share what we use? All the metrics that we've developed have been pretty much developed in-house. And I have to say that I don't think there's a lot of predictive value in metrics. If you think of risk as impact times probability, we can pretty much get the impact part. It's the probability that is so hard to nail. So if a few issues do slip through and get to the production environment, what are the chances of those issues being exploited? Depending on which part of our external website would be affected, then the risk could be extremely high or it could be somewhat lower. So I don't have a great answer on metrics, and we've tried over the past 4 years to come up with some comprehensive amalgam of all the various security metrics to say, here's the risk level, you know, like a color-coded risk level or something like that. We just can't get to it, and it's because it's so hard to predict adverse events. I will say that it's extremely helpful to publish patch metrics, because it seems like everybody, even at the executive level, can immediately understand that if a server is in the internet DMZ, facing the internet that is, and it's unpatched, that bad things can happen. So I think that's one of the metrics that is most easily digested at the executive level. And I think that's one to keep hammering home, because it's the low-hanging fruit. If somebody's going to try to crack into a system, we can't only focus on layer 7, we have to look at the whole thing holistically. Other questions? Yes, question? So that's a good question. What was the motivating factor for coming up with a security program? How do we get it funded? What was the adverse event that made us decide to devote more resources to security consulting? It's a great question, and I think I would have to go back to a really visionary leader that we had. I talked about him earlier, Phil Agquilli. He's now the Chief Information Security at Cox Communications, but he came in as we were trying to reinvigorate the whole information security program, and he said, I see what Microsoft's doing with their SDL. We can't ignore that, and we have to respond to it. We have to start making investments. And it just happened to be the perfect alignment of a really motivated leader. I guess we had enough budget at the time to begin ramping up in this area, and there were probably enough sad stories about incidents or whatever. I can't really speak to any, but I'm sure that there had to have been some problems that existed that people knew that they had to prevent in the future. Yeah, good question. Other questions? Okay. Oh, this risk modeler tool. If you're working at a large company, then I would definitely recommend you develop a tool like this. Ours is highly customizable. We can change the questions on the fly. We have 6 different engagement types, depending on if it's internal development at Dell, or if it's development being done by a contracting company, if it's a product group, a product that we're launching, so that the questions will vary according to engagement type, and out pops a risk rating at the end. It's saved us a lot of effort. It's helped us focus our limited resources in the right areas, and that 1/4 of all projects being high risk has been pretty true and accurate, and that was, I guess, somewhat based in luck. Because we designed the questions, we made some guesses about where we should be focusing our attention, for example, based on the data classification. Was it credit card related? Was it externally facing? Is there personally identifiable information? All those sorts of questions that help build the risk rating. And this tool has been invaluable for us. But if you're at a smaller company, I'm sure you could do the same sort of thing in Excel, and your communication, if you've got maybe 2 people doing application security, or even 1 person, there's no sense having a Baroque tool that is hard to maintain or develop from the outset, but it's been extremely helpful for us. Threat modeling, I know that's come up in a couple of the talks earlier today, and we reserve threat modeling primarily for product group, for services, and for high-risk IT projects. One of the challenges we face in IT is that teams are not so accustomed to doing data flow diagrams as part of their development methodology for IT. They're much more off-the-cuff, seat-of-your-pants sort of coders. And so if you don't have the data flow diagram as an input to your threat modeling process, it makes it really difficult. So we're trying to do a couple of things to adapt to that need in IT for a lighter weight threat modeling. So we still encourage high-risk projects to do the full-bore serious threat modeling with data flow diagrams, et cetera. But we've rolled out 2 other approaches for lightweight threat modeling. And frankly, experienced security consultant can kind of interview the development team, start poking around, asking questions about the trust boundaries and about the data and that sort of thing. And I think they can come up with a lot of that stuff in a very short period of time, versus some threat models can take multiple days. It's a lot of commitment from the security team, which we can't really apply one security consultant for multiple days doing a threat model unless it's a really high-risk endeavor. Are other people doing threat modeling and experiencing kind of similar concerns about the return on investment? Okay. Source code scans, I talked about this. This is certainly not the most important part of our security program, but it is a key component, and it does have that educational role to play. We've had great luck with this particular vendor, and another thing that I didn't mention when I was talking about the attributes we needed in a source code analysis tool was they were ready to support installation of their tool on Vista, and it would support .NET Framework 3.5 sooner than all the competition. And we've got a lot of early adopters in our development community, so it was crucial that we have support for newer OSs, newer development environments. Pre-deployment scans are typically reserved for high-risk projects, and they're at the discretion of the consultant. Pen testing, of course, we do on a routine basis. One thing I'll call out about penetration testing is that it's really a rare skill to find someone who is good at penetration testing and vulnerability testing, who also is happy working in a large corporate environment. We have some really talented people that have come through the door and done great work, but they get frustrated by, oh, there's this bureaucracy to get work done. You know, it's not so difficult to identify vulnerabilities. It's really difficult to pursue them to resolution. So we've currently got a really great team, a red team in Malaysia that does all of our penetration testing internally, and we're really happy with the results we've gotten from them. Our team doesn't do penetration testing. We always hand that off to the red team. I just want to call out that if you find that unique combination of pen testing skills and corporate savvy, that is rare. Hang on to that person, because more typically you'll find someone that you need to slide flat foods under the door to them, you know? So, lessons learned. And I'm wrapping up here, so if you have more questions, feel free. I think we're pretty close, maybe 5 minutes left? Okay, 6 minutes left, okay. So we added ourselves into an existing SDLC. It was after it had already been streamlined, because the old SDLC at our company was too bloated, too much bureaucracy. So we put ourselves in very gently into the SDLC to make sure that people would still come to us. But because we found that if you make things too difficult, if you set the bar too high, people will not come to you. So we want to be reasonable and business-oriented. We partnered with other groups, and it helped us survive reorganization over time. When we went to VPs, we did talk about regulatory compliance. We did talk about keeping hot issues from getting into production. We developed our deployment strategy organization by organization in IT. We didn't try to roll it out across the entire corporation at once. We wanted to start with clear success for one VP. We went to the next VP and said, will you send a message to all of your developers that they need to follow our process? Got those people squared away, then went to the third and fourth like that. And that proved to be a very helpful strategy. Oh, we have an exception management process for teams that need more time to meet our requirements. It's composed of subject matter experts from our team in security, from database, networks, et cetera. And the key for exception management is to, of course, evaluate the risk, and if the risk is too high, get executives to either assign more resources to fix the issue or to accept the risk and move on. So exception management was crucial. In fact, that was a crucial part of selling this to executives, so that they knew that if we were going to slow down their project, there was a good reason to do so. And so that's about it. Any suggestions for improvement, things that we've missed? I know that we're not perfect, and we would love to get feedback on what we could be doing better.
I had a question for you.
Sure.
On your exception management process, do you have very specific deadlines for the risk of the application or the risk of vulnerability? And then also, can you talk about your process as far as if you have a low risk item and you're going to choose to permanently accept the risk?
Okay. So the question was around the exception management process. Do we have timelines for accepting the risk? So that was part one of your question. I'll go ahead and answer